Welcome to Module 1, Stress, what it is and how to manage it for a better life. Pretty relevant topic these days for everyone.
Definitely.
This module is presented to you by the All Clear Foundation, the National Emergency Responder and Public Safety Center, and Uniform Advantage. Stress. What it is, by definition, it's the body's response to a threat, a perceived threat or a challenge. One of the interesting things about this definition is it doesn't have to be a real threat. It can be a perceived threat. Our minds play a tremendous role in how we perceive and how we respond physiologically to stress.
It does, significantly. And we're going to talk throughout about perception and the important role of perception on the challenges that we're faced by.
So stress isn't bad. The stress response is designed to protect us. It's designed to fire us up when we are under an imminent threat, an imminent danger, and to move us to safety. It's meant to be an acute experience. Here's the danger, you take the appropriate action, and then you taper back down. Your sympathetic nervous system comes out of overdrive, your parasympathetic system comes back into balance, and life rolls on. So a certain level of stress response is absolutely demanded for performance in life, whether it's sports, job, home life.
Yeah.
So stress itself isn't bad.
And again, if your perception of stress is that it's good, the other part that comes in is that it can open up learning centers in your brain. It can help you learn more efficiently and effectively. It can help you recall information better. It can open your brain up to different possibilities and enhance your problem solving ability. I mean, there really are, there's a plethora of benefits from stress. However, again, it kind of, too much of anything sometimes isn't good. So we're gonna hit on some of that.
Right. And that stress is good when it is optimized, when it is appropriate for the challenge,
Yep.
not excessive, and when it is short-term in nature, that it's just there for the event itself, it's not prolonged. And that's one of the big challenges we've been seeing, especially in the healthcare worker community, but also in the emergency responder community and with our families too, that the prolonged amount of stress that's been experienced since the beginning of 2020 and continues on is really challenging our capacity, our ability to cope. So what we want to do in this module is really talk about what stress is. There is an optimal amount of stress for any challenge. Most of us know sympathetic nervous system tends to guide us in three paths: fight, flight, or freeze. We don't really get to choose which one our body chooses in the moment. That is driven predominantly by the flood of stress hormones in our body. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of different hormones that get triggered, but the two big ones are adrenaline and cortisol.
Yep.
Interesting thing, adrenaline, we can't produce for very long. Adrenaline will peak and then it will plummet off. Cortisol, unfortunately, we can produce and maintain for a very long amount of time. And this is part of what contributes to a phenomenon that we'll talk about later in this series, the tired and wired feeling, that you're just exhausted, but you can't rest. And we'll talk a lot more about that.
And also overflowing your system with so much cortisol that you're incapable of relaxing. I mean, the body is just overrun, and the chemistry, you end up carrying that chemistry with you. So anytime we activate chemistry, remember that we have to get rid of that chemistry, or we end up carrying that chemistry. And where we carry that chemistry matters, and can also have long-term impacts on your health.
Great. So when we talk about the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, it's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Stress triggers the sympathetic. Our pupils will dilate, we'll get rapid breathing, our heart pumps faster, blood flow to the muscles, it increases, blood flow to the gut decreases. So the sympathetic nervous system is looking for immediate threats. It takes things for long-term survival offline because they're inessential in the moment. So immune system, digestive system, those things kind of take a back seat because the body feels like I'm under threat. That's not going to be what kills me. The parasympathetic nervous system, which is called rest and digest, is something that occurs when the body's at rest. So your pupils relax, you get slow, deep breathing, your heart slows, your gut becomes active. What we really are striving for is to balance these in our lives. Use the sympathetic nervous system response when it's needed, but live for the majority in the parasympathetic nervous system. What happens with modern life, and especially over the past year and a half or so, is that we are all staying highly activated in the sympathetic nervous system, which doesn't only affect the systems we've talked about. It plays a role in some other prevalent and potentially serious medical conditions for our professions. High blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, substance misuse as an attempt to numb or to cope, anxiety, depression, and digestive issues. Those all run rampant in our communities. And in high stress situations, it's not just us. It's estimated that 60 to 80% of the visits to primary healthcare providers are for conditions that are stress related. Yet the research shows that only about 3% of those people actually get advice on how to better manage stress. So if you really want to improve the quality of your life overall, there is no better single piece of advice than to learn to manage stress better.
And what I usually tell all of the responders that we work with is that if you've got a little bit of stress, and maybe you've got a little bit of something else, you've got a little bit of indigestion, you've got a little bit of acid reflux, you got a little bit of hair loss, you add a whole bunch of stress to it, you're going to have a lot more of whatever it is that you had. And even looking over this last year, I feel like if you had literally a little bit of something, you probably ended up with a whole lot more of it than what you had thought because of all of the anxiety, whether it's anticipatory anxiety, but all of the stimulation, all the stressors, all of the trauma exposure. I think it's really pushed people kind of over the edge. And in many cases, some of those conditions, you know, I've had a number of responders who ultimately take themselves to the hospital thinking that they're having a heart attack. And they're told, yeah, you're not having a heart attack, but you might want to talk to a psychologist because I think you're having a panic attack. And then I get the phone call from the responder, hey, Jamie, this is really embarrassing, but thought I was having a heart attack. As luck would have it, I think it's anxiety. Can I come to your office instead? Absolutely. So just know, though, that a lot of those symptoms, a lot of those things that we end up dealing with are either caused by stress or stress could be making them much more worse.
Well, and the good thing is when we recognize this and we're aware of it, we've talked about it already, but we'll talk about it a lot more, is that stress isn't as much about what's happening to us externally, because we don't have a whole lot of control over that. It's more about how we internalize it in our perception, what we think about it. So once we recognize that stress isn't just in our head and it has these pervasive impacts on our bodies and on our lives, we develop the awareness that we can take action to minimize the impact of stress.
And really a multi-pronged approach. It's not like we'll just remove the stressor and somehow life will be better, or if you could just be healthier and just work out a lot, or just, it really is a multi-pronged approach that we're going to hit on here throughout these modules.